Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today I'm showing you how to make these beautiful resin-dried flower with leaves bookmarks. If you love flowers and resin like I do, you're going to have a great time with this one, and it's easier than it looks. I'm Amy and I run this channel with my husband Tanner. We are full-time artists and crafters, and we started this channel to share craft tutorials, product reviews, and business tips for fellow makers. Whether you're here to check out a project or to grow your own craft business, we've got you covered. Alright, let's get started. First, gather your UV resin or regular resin, dried flowers and leaves, gloves, and bookmark molds. I got these off Amazon, but you can make them yourself with silicone. I'll share with you a link at the end of the video for how to make them. Scissors, pointed ones work best for precise cuts, tweezers, silicone mixing cups. The dried flowers are where you get to be creative. Pick the ones you love. I'm using UV resin today because it cures quickly under a UV light, but regular resin works just as well if you don't mind waiting a bit longer. Since I'm using UV resin, I don't need to mix anything. Since these molds are thin, don't try to move them after pouring your resin. I set mine on old cutting boards wrapped in wax paper for easy handling. If you're using regular resin, just follow the package directions. Pour your resin into a clean silicone cup, just enough to fill your molds, less than halfway. If you want thinner bookmarks, use even less. Pour slowly to prevent air bubbles. To remove bubbles, you can use a lighter, heat gun, or even your breath. A silicone tool or toothpick also helps pop or guide bubbles to the surface. Once you've got your base layer, cure it under UV light. Or if you're using regular resin, let it thicken for a couple hours before moving on. Now for the fun part, arranging the flowers. You can create little floral bouquets, mix and match, or just scatter petals and leaves randomly. Flat flowers and leaves work best. If something's too big, trim it to fit your mold. Before adding flowers, I put a bit of resin on the cured base layer to help them stick and prevent bubbles from forming when I pour the next layer over top. Once your flowers are in place, carefully pour a thin layer of resin over top. Don't overfill. If resin spills over the mold, you'll get sharp edges instead of smooth ones. Some of these bookmark molds are small enough to turn into keychains. Years ago, I made the mistake of overfilling my resin molds. I filled them slightly above the top, so they look like little domes. This had worked before, so I thought the surface tension would keep everything in place. But then as I stood up from my desk, I bumped the table, and everything collapsed and sort of melted together. I decided to just let it dry since cleaning a larger plastic mold would have been too difficult. The worst part, there were hardly any bubbles for once, but when I broke the pieces apart, they had tons of sharp edges. Gently tap the mold to let the resin settle. If needed, use a toothpick or silicone tool to adjust the flowers. If your resin is very thin, flowers and leaves may float. You can prevent this by securing them with a bit of Mod Podge, a thin layer of resin left to cure for a couple hours, or a quick UV light flash if you're using UV resin. If your flowers keep floating, don't panic. You can lightly press them down with a toothpick or silicone tool. Slide them around gently on the base layer until they sort of stick. You can wait for it to thicken up a bit before moving them too. Once you're happy with the flower arrangement, pour the final layer of resin to cover everything. Be careful not to overfill. You'll want your bookmarks to be lightweight and smooth. Cure under a UV light for 5 to 10 minutes. Stop about 45 seconds in to check if the resin is bending. Straighten it out with your hands before continuing. Also, flip over the mold so the UV light reaches the back. If it's a sunny, mostly wind-free day, you can even cure them outside in natural UV light. For regular resin, let them cure for about 24 hours. Now for the best part, demolding. Gently pop your bookmarks out, and look at that. Gorgeous, flower-filled resin. I'm going to add these tassels. But you can use a ribbon, tassels like these, or even some braided yarn. If the edges are rough, you could trim them and sand them down, but wear a mask and goggles if sanding resin. And do it outdoors if you can. I decided to turn the smaller one into a keychain. And I also made an extra thin one for books I read casually. I usually have around 4 to 5 books going at once. Some I finish right away, but others I take my time with. Thicker bookmarks can be too bulky for books at the bottom of my reading pile, so I like to have thinner ones too. And that's it. You now have your own beautiful resin-dried flower bookmarks. Let me know in the comments what designs you try. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to like the video, leave a comment telling me your favorite flower, and subscribe for more fun crafting projects. If you're thinking about selling your handmade crafts, remember, simple products like these bookmarks can be a great way to test the waters. Start small, refine your process, and don't be afraid to experiment with designs that make your work stand out. Handmade items with a personal touch always attract buyers. If you want to learn 4 great ways to dry your own flowers, check this video out. Happy crafting, and I'll see you in the next video.